The courtroom was cold, not just in temperature, but in truth. Fluorescent lights hummed above rows of wooden benches, casting a pale glare on the sea of rigid faces. Some wore tailored suits, others military caps. All were here for one thing: justice. But justice, today, was in chains. At the front of the courtroom, elevated above all others like a deity presiding over mortals, sat Judge Harold Whitmore, a man with 28 years on the bench and a reputation for rulings that were razor-sharp and cold-blooded. A man who, behind closed doors, once called decorated veterans entitled with trauma, and had the gavel to make those words policy. Across from him stood a woman who had seen real war. Not courtroom drama, actual blood, sweat, sand, and steel. Brigadier General Naomi Ellison. She didn't flinch as Whitmore snarled at her, the words like venom laced in supremacy. "Remove that decoration from your uniform immediately," he barked. "This is a court of law, not your personal parade ground." There was a gasp from the gallery, but Naomi remained motionless. She was 44, broad-shouldered, and regal in her full-dress blues. Her Medal of Valor, congressional issue, sat firmly on her chest, pinned like an eternal flame. Her voice, when it came, was smooth as steel. "Your Honor, this medal isn't a decoration. It's a legacy built on sacrifice, by those who didn't make it home." Judge Whitmore's eyes narrowed. He leaned forward, elbows on his desk, face a mask of disgust. "I don't care if it represents Moses and the 10 Commandments," he snapped. "This is my courtroom. Remove it, or be removed." And there it was, the line. The courtroom hushed. Cameras from local media blinked red in the corner, capturing it all. Naomi stood frozen, not in fear, but in calculation. She knew this moment might come. She had planned for it. Her fingers brushed the edge of the medal, then dropped. In the gallery, a gray-haired man with a limp stood slowly. Then another. Then a third. Men and women of all races, veterans with worn faces and eyes full of ghosts, rose in silent protest. Their message was clear: you are not alone. Whitmore's lips curled into a tight scowl. "This is contempt," he growled. "Security, remove her, now!" The bailiff, Sergeant Marcus Briggs, hesitated. A 25-year veteran of the Gulf War, he stood rooted in place. His eyes flicked between the judge and the general. The muscles in his jaw danced with tension. "Your Honor," he said cautiously, "I respectfully decline." "What?" Whitmore nearly spat. "You decline a direct order?" "With all due respect, sir. I took an oath to defend the Constitution. That includes dignity. That includes her." Whitmore slammed the gavel. "Then you're done here, both of you. Out!" Naomi stepped forward. She didn't yell. She didn't plead. She simply extended her wrists, calm as a quiet storm. "Go ahead, Sergeant. I won't resist." Briggs shook his head with a kind of grief in his eyes. "I'm sorry, ma'am." "Don't be," she replied. "You're doing your job. I'm doing mine." As they led her out, the courtroom erupted, not in chaos, but in a slow, resonant murmur, the sound of respect, of realization. But this wasn't the end. It was only the matchstick. In the holding cell, Naomi sat on a metal bench, back straight. Her eyes weren't angry. They were alive. Alive with purpose. A guard knocked once, then opened the door. Sergeant Briggs entered first, his face flushed with guilt. Behind him came a man with salt and pepper hair, thick-rimmed glasses, and a smile full of fire. Elijah Mendez, civil rights attorney. At his side stood Congressman Lamar Beasley, chair of the Veterans Oversight Committee, flanked by 2 investigative journalists and a quiet woman with a laptop typing every word. "General," Elijah said, "everything is in motion." "The footage?" Naomi asked. Live-streamed, archived, already hit 1.4 million views. Congressman Beasley stepped forward. You stood for us. Now, we're going to stand for you. Naomi exhaled deeply, just once. 6 months ago, she had begun collecting stories. 29 veterans, all denied benefits. All with similar backgrounds, Black, Latino, Asian, all under the rulings of one man. She didn't go to war again for glory. She went to war again for truth. Back in the courtroom, Whitmore was savoring his perceived victory. He leaned toward Megan Tiller, the corporate attorney representing private contractors that often testified in veterans' hearings. "See that?" he muttered. "One flash of power, and they crumble." But Megan didn't look pleased. She was pale, her eyes flickering with something dangerously close to regret. "Sir, we might have made a mistake." 30 minutes later, the courtroom doors opened again. This time, it wasn't Naomi in cuffs. It was a coalition. Elijah Mendez strode in first, presenting formal legal documents. Congressman Beasley followed, holding a sealed congressional folder. Behind them came retired Chief Justice Eleanor Ray, whose legacy for justice spanned decades. And then came Naomi, still in uniform, still wearing her medal, not in defiance, in dignity. The room shifted. Even the stenographer resumed typing like she knew history was being written. Whitmore rose from his seat, face twisted. "What is this? Who authorized—" "Federal oversight," Beasley cut in. "You're no longer presiding over this case. Effective immediately." Mendez dropped a thick file on the judge's bench. "We've compiled 87 pages of judicial misconduct, sir. From manipulated paperwork to disproportionate denials based on race and origin. And it all leads back to you." Phones lit up across the room. Hashtags began forming in real time. Ellison vs. Injustice. Justice for Miguel. Whitmore revealed. Naomi stepped forward again, not as a soldier, but as a citizen demanding truth. "You asked me to remove a medal that wasn't about me. It was about the ones you buried behind bureaucracy. Miguel Alvarez was one of them. He died saving 5 men. You called it non-combat to save money. That mother out there, you stole from her." Whitmore flushed. "This is slander." "No," interrupted Justice Ray, placing her own file beside Mendez's. "This is evidence, and you're going to answer to it." In the back of the room, the doors opened again. This time, Maria Alvarez entered, her steps slow but unshaken. She held a framed picture of her son, Miguel, in uniform. She said nothing. She walked directly to Naomi's side, lifted the picture for all to see, and nodded. And that moment, that one still moment, said everything. Dozens of others followed. Veterans, widows, children of the fallen. They stood, not in anger, but in presence. A father held up a denial letter dated the day after his son's funeral. A young woman in camo held her infant daughter and whispered, "He never got to meet her." It wasn't just a protest. It was a reckoning. Back in the holding cell, Naomi had looked at herself in the mirror before walking back into that courtroom. She didn't see a hero. She saw a soldier, a mother, a protector. Now, as the world watched, her voice carried one message. "We gave you our lives. You gave us loopholes. But not anymore." Judge Harold Whitmore was sweating. It wasn't visible to most, but Naomi saw it. The slightest glint of moisture on his temple, the tremble at the corners of his mouth. His arrogance had cracked, and behind it was something far more fragile. Fear. This is a coordinated ambush," he stammered, gesturing to the rows of veterans, lawyers, media, and families now filling the courtroom. "This isn't a hearing. It's a circus." Justice Eleanor Ray took a deliberate step forward. her heels echoing sharply on the wood floor. "No, Judge Whitmore, this is what accountability looks like when it finally arrives." She turned to the clerk. "Please record. I, retired Chief Justice Eleanor Ray, acting in advisory capacity and present by request of congressional oversight, hereby confirm the opening of formal investigation into alleged judicial misconduct and racial discrimination under the authority of Judge Harold Whitmore." The clerk's hands shook slightly as he typed. Whitmore tried to collect himself. He straightened his robe, but the command in his voice was gone. "You're all making a mistake. This will blow over. Some internet hysteria." Naomi stepped forward, calm and unshaken. "You called the death of Private First Class Miguel Alvarez non-combat. You denied his family death benefits. But here's what the surveillance footage from his outpost showed." She raised a small tablet, already connected to a courtroom monitor. The screen lit up. Footage played. It was grainy, black and white, but unmistakable. Miguel, 20 years old, dragging injured soldiers from a smoldering jeep while taking enemy fire. An audible gasp swept the room. Whitmore tried to speak, but his voice caught. This wasn't part of the original record." "Because it was buried," said Elijah Mendez, stepping forward, "along with dozens of other pieces of evidence. And we have proof you coordinated with contractor attorneys to withhold that footage from the case file." He placed a printed email on the judge's bench. The sender, Megan Tiller. The recipient, Whitmore's personal, non-court email. The subject line, Denial Strategy, Alvarez Case. The silence was volcanic. "This is outrageous," Whitmore snapped, now flushed and wild-eyed. "Emails don't prove intent. This is taken out of context." Amanda Reese, from the Department of Justice, stood calmly and approached the bench. "Actually, Judge, the entire thread was subpoenaed, and context isn't in your favor." She turned to address the court. "As of this morning, Judge Harold Whitmore is under federal investigation for judicial misconduct, case tampering, racial bias, and violation of veterans' rights under the Equal Protection Clause." Gasps filled the room. What happens now?" Whitmore asked, almost whispering. "Now?" Naomi replied, stepping up beside Beasley. "Now, the system starts cleaning up the mess you made." She turned to the gallery, where Maria Alvarez still stood with the photo of her son. "For every Miguel, for every Marcus, for every soldier silenced not by war, but by bureaucracy." The courtroom drama had ignited a national firestorm. News outlets across political lines aired the footage non-stop. The clip of Naomi refusing to remove her medal went viral, gathering over 42 million views in 72 hours. The hashtag #JusticeForVeterans trended globally. Meanwhile, the Veterans Legal Coalition reported a 900% spike in inquiries and complaints about past case rulings. Lawyers nationwide volunteered pro bono to help. Even the Pentagon released a public statement. "Every service member deserves not just our gratitude, but our protection when they return home." The events involving Judge Whitmore are under full federal review. In the halls of Congress, hearings were scheduled. Policies were reevaluated. And quietly, behind closed doors, several judges who had built careers on similarly discriminatory rulings began resigning. Naomi didn't watch the news much. She was too busy visiting families, those she'd met in court, and many she hadn't. Each home a quiet battleground, each parent, spouse, or child holding memories in frames and folded flags. One visit took her to San Antonio, where Sergeant Briggs had grown up. He invited her to a community center where he now volunteered with at-risk youth. "I never told anyone," he said. but I almost ended it. After my claim was denied, I felt like I didn't matter. Naomi nodded, eyes shining. You do. You always did. It was the system that forgot. They sat in silence for a while, surrounded by kids laughing and playing. Do you think he'll serve time? Briggs asked. Naomi sighed. That's not up to me. But even if he walks free, his power is gone. His robe, his gavel, gone. And the world knows the truth now. Judge Harold Whitmore sat hunched in a black suit, 2 sizes too large, his once commanding presence shriveled under fluorescent lights and relentless questioning. Naomi sat on the opposite side of the chamber, invited as a key witness. Her testimony was clinical, measured, devastating. She recounted how she'd uncovered patterns, why she started investigating, how nearly every soldier denied by Whitmore was a person of color, how internal emails showed collusion, how he manipulated technical loopholes to deny combat status and reduce payouts. Congressman Beasley leaned into the microphone. General Ellison, why did you wear the Medal of Valor that day? You knew it might provoke a reaction. She didn't hesitate. Because silence has never protected anyone. I wore it not as a symbol of pride, but as a mirror, to reflect the injustice we've allowed to go unchecked. Applause broke protocol. No one stopped it. Naomi never wanted vengeance, only justice. But when the civil case against Whitmore and the corporations who benefited from his rulings began, she showed up every day. Not for herself, but for the families. The prosecution presented financial records, bonuses tied to benefits, denials, contractor kickbacks, and lobbying payouts. One document showed that Whitmore had denied benefits to 94 veterans, saving the state nearly $7.2 million, while also receiving nearly $500,000 in consulting gifts from affiliated firms. Naomi didn't speak much during the trial. She didn't need to. Her presence, decorated, composed, relentless, was louder than any words. The jury ruled in favor of the plaintiffs. $14.5 million awarded to impacted families, immediate reversal of 62 rulings. Whitmore permanently disbarred criminal referral to DOJ for further prosecution outside the courthouse. Veterans gathered. Some cried, some cheered. Most simply stood tall. Naomi emerged quietly, hugged by Maria Alvarez, and surrounded by the same people who had once been silenced. A reporter pushed a mic toward her. General Ellison, what's next for you? She looked out over the crowd, thought for a moment, then smiled. I'm going to keep fighting, because this wasn't about a courtroom, it was about a country, and we're not done yet. Naomi founded Valor Beyond the Battlefield, a nonprofit legal and psychological support organization for veterans wronged by the system. They'd helped over 3,000 veterans in their first 11 months. She refused awards, declined speaking tours, turned down interviews from major networks. She stayed focused on the mission. Every week, she visited one family. Every week, she sat in a courtroom. And every week, she reminded the system, you will not bury our service with paperwork. That evening, in her modest apartment, Naomi stood before her shelf. On it sat her Medal of Valor. Next to it, a worn photograph of Miguel Alvarez. And beside that, a framed headline from the day the verdict was announced. General's stand shatters years of injustice, Naomi whispered. You mattered, Miguel. You always did. She turned off the light. Have you ever seen someone use their power to silence those who couldn't fight back? What would you do if you were in Naomi's shoes? Would you stand your ground, even if the system pushed back? Share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Real stories of courage, justice, and the everyday people who make change happen. Because sometimes the loudest weapon against injustice is one person who refuses to be silent.